Well, last Sunday was Pluralism Sunday, which was a tradition that was started a few years ago by the Center for Progressive Christianity, and their purpose was to recognize that the United States was founded on principles of pluralism and religious freedom. There isn't supposed to be any kind of an officially established state religion and no laws that would infringe on the free exercise of religion. And the fact that this tradition of Pluralism Sunday was started by a group calling itself Christian, I think is noteworthy because it seems unusual, at least to me, to hear a Christian group acknowledge that it's okay to practice any faith other than Christianity. Now, of course, Christianity isn't the only religion that used to think that non-Christians were unsaved heathens. I'm not singling them out. Christians, yes, Christians have used the word infidel to describe an outsider or a non-believer. In Islam, they're called kafir. In Judaism, unbelievers are known as Gentiles, or in a more mildly derogatory form, they're called goyim sometimes. Yeah. Either way, it seems like we just got to have a word to label the outsider, to label the other. It's part of that tribal level of consciousness from the early days in our evolution as a species here on planet Earth. It's one of those toxic aspects of religion that I mentioned last week. The tribal consciousness is very defensive. Nobody, either inside or outside the tribe, is allowed to question or criticize the rules and the beliefs of the tribe. Anyone who does gets called a blasphemer or a heretic. Technically, blasphemy is being disrespectful and heresy is teaching something contrary to the official doctrine, but in our world they tend to get lumped together under the word blasphemy. And in many parts of the world, blasphemy is a criminal offense. In some places, it carries the death penalty, and in other places, there are angry mobs who will impose their own death penalty when someone is accused of blasphemy and they feel insulted or offended. Just this last week, there were 2 cases where people were charged with blasphemy, cases that got national attention. One is from Indonesia. That's a majority Muslim country, but the governor of Jakarta happens to be a Christian. Governor Basuki is his name. He was running for re-election last fall, and there were Muslim religious leaders who were quoting a verse from the Quran saying that Muslims were forbidden to vote for a non-Muslim. That's how they were opposing him. So Basuki's crime was daring to question that verse in the Quran, daring to claim that the verse didn't apply or that the verse didn't prevent people from voting for him. That's it. He was charged with blasphemy. It's a criminal offense. And last week, he was convicted and sentenced to 2 years in a maximum security prison. I think I got his picture. There he is. That's Governor Basuki. 2 years in a maximum security prison with violent criminals. The other story, this one, I couldn't believe it when I heard it. This story happened in what we think of as a Christian country. This next picture, that's Stephen Fry. Some of you might recognize him. He's an English comedian, English actor. He had been appearing on a talk show in Ireland, and this particular event goes back to 2015. And of course the topic of religion came up and what he thinks about God. And Stephen Fry said that he could never respect a capricious, mean-minded, stupid God who creates a world full of injustice. I quote, "Ireland has a blasphemy law. Take a guess when that blasphemy law was passed in Ireland. Anyone care to guess?" Yeah, I heard 1700. I figured the Dark Ages too. 2009. 2009, Ireland decided to pass a blasphemy law. And someone complained to the police about what he had said, so they started an investigation. As they must, it is their duty to uphold the law. An official police investigation, because of what Stephen Fry said, called God capricious, mean-minded, and stupid. One person took offense, the police get involved. Now, the only bright spot is that in order to actually prosecute someone under this law, you need more than one complaint. There has to be more than one person outraged by the statement. And after what they called a thorough investigation, the police could not find one single other person who was outraged by what he said. So they dropped the investigation. What year is this? It's hard to believe that there's a law like that on the books in Ireland, but there it is. And now you know what's happened. You have people in Ireland lining up to get on radio shows and TV shows and on the web, posting things, similar things to what he said in order, just begging to be prosecuted. Okay, and just to round things out, Burma. Burma is a Buddhist country that has a blasphemy law. Actually, it's a Buddhist country. They're having some battles with Hindu and Muslim, one of those sad situations. 2014, a New Zealander and 2 Burmese men were convicted of blasphemy after using an advertisement depicting Buddha wearing headphones that they used to promote a drink special at a bar. They were sentenced to 2.5 years in prison. Now, I've gone ahead and put the offending picture up on the screen. I want you all to listen very carefully for police sirens so we have enough time for Jacob to destroy the evidence. But there it is. Buddha with headphones, 2 years in prison. 2.5 years in prison, they said. 20% of the countries, 26% of the countries around the world have blasphemy laws. What's even worse, though, than official blasphemy laws is something I like to call blasphemy consciousness. These are people who believe that they have the right, that they are compelled to resort to violence against someone who says anything about their favorite ideology or deity that they consider to be insulting or offensive. That can include just about any form of criticism, satire, a joke. We all know this. In Pakistan, angry mobs kill people on a regular basis for things like that. And we all, of course, remember what happened in Paris in January of 2015 when Islamic terrorists killed 12 people at the office of a popular magazine that made jokes about Islamic leaders and Muhammad. We remember that like it was yesterday, at least I do. Someone once said that blasphemy laws are an unequivocal admission that religion cannot survive in the presence of free speech and free thought. Because what kind of a God needs to have a blasphemy law for protection from criticism? What kind of God needs any kind of protection? A weak one. One that's not worthy of being called God. Same thing goes for any person in a position of power or leadership. If they need laws to be enacted to protect them from criticism or satire, they are demonstrating that they are weak. Blasphemy laws are created to protect ideas that can't be defended any other way. In order to defend the indefensible, you have to silence the critics. And a lot of religious doctrines are indefensible. When they're questioned, when they're challenged, they fail the test of reason, they fail the test of practical application. Therefore, they need special protection so that doesn't happen. We may not have blasphemy laws in the United States, but blasphemy consciousness has been an ongoing problem. I would suggest that the Civil War was an example of blasphemy consciousness in action. Slavery was part of an ideology steeped in religion. And the very suggestion that people from Africa were equal to white Europeans was considered to be so outrageous and insulting that it justified the death and the mass destruction of the Civil War. The institution of slavery needed to be criticized and condemned. I can't think of a person today who would disagree with that, because nothing will get better if we declare that certain institutions and ideas are off limits to questioning, criticism, and even satire. Shortly after the shootings in Paris, there was an organization called the Center for Inquiry which posted this statement. They said, "The notion that Islam or any religion must be protected from questioning is incompatible with fundamental human rights and can motivate extremists to engage in outrageous acts, as confirmed by the attacks in Paris. It is human beings who deserve respect, and it is the right to free expression that must be protected." And I would extend that to any idea. Part of our leadership training in unity says that we need to be hard on ideas and soft on people. I like that. Hard on ideas, soft on people. We can respect the individual, but we can question and criticize the ideas they claim are true. We can question and criticize ideas without engaging in personal attacks. I would say today that some of the most courageous people in the world are the ones who stand up for human rights under the threat of being accused of blasphemy. These are people who deserve our support. And since it's Mother's Day, I thought I might offer an additional perspective on what we're celebrating here today. Karen provided one perspective during the meditation, but for those who perhaps never knew their biological mother or perhaps had no meaningful relationship or a less than optimal relationship with what we might consider to be a nurturing mother figure, I want to add another possibility for this Mother's Day. Let's include women role models who inspire us. I have a good example. Someone like her. You all know the story of Malala, right? She was born in northwest Pakistan in 1997. That's a country that has some really harsh blasphemy laws, and blasphemy consciousness reigns supreme. Her father ran a school there, and there was this local faction of the Taliban which declared that girls should be banned from attending school. Women weren't supposed to be educated. No education for women, so Malala decided to speak out. 2009, the New York Times did a documentary about her. She was discussing what it was like to live under Taliban military control. And she continued to speak out for the right of women and girls to receive an education. 2012, the Taliban shot her in the head while she was coming home from school on the bus. Of course, we know she lived, but not without extensive medical care and rehabilitation. And then she went right back to doing what she had been doing. She continues to be an education activist, and the Taliban said the reason they wanted to kill her, the reason they had to do this, was because she was a symbol of the infidels and obscenity. She was saying terrible, dirty things. That was the language that they used. Dirty, obscene. Isn't it interesting how that language of disgust creeps into the vocabulary of the totalitarians? It's interesting. And of course there was that word infidel again. And they also said that killing her was justified by their holy book, the Quran, and they said they would do it again if they had the chance. Malala still considers herself to be a Muslim. She remains a part of the religion of Islam, but she is clearly a reformer. Those are the people who are most at risk from Islamic terrorism. But if change is going to come, that's where it's going to have to come from. It's going to have to come from within. Those are the people we need to recognize and support. So as far as I'm concerned, all blasphemy laws need to go. Whether they're in Christian countries, Islamic, Buddhist, Jewish. We can't build a better world if we can't talk about the things that we're doing wrong, if we can't talk about the things that we need to change. If we see injustice and oppression defended under the pretext of religion, or if different religious groups want to pass laws based on their religious doctrines or holy books, people should be free to speak out, to criticize, and to oppose those ideas. Freedom of speech should be as close to absolute as we can get. Anything short of inciting violence or the proverbial yelling fire in a crowded theater, that's the outer limit, but anything else goes. That's the standard that we set in this country when we ratified the First Amendment. And it's a standard and it's a right that this young woman in Pakistan was willing to die for, and almost did. So let me suggest on this Mother's Day that maybe as a way to honor a mother's memory or honor the memory of another woman role model who inspired us, let's find a way to support this movement that wants to see women in the world be educated. There are places out there. Go online, look for educating women. You'll find several organizations. Find a way to support that in honor of our mothers and in honor of women role models who inspire us and help us to make this world work for all. It's not going to work for all if 50% of the population of the world is being left behind when it comes to education. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.